Welcome to an Odyssey of Mixology. This is the third part of my segment on spice, and in this video I'm going to come up with an idea for a new fairly complicated spicy cocktail, and then show what the process looks like to go from that idea to the final drink that I've never made before. Enjoy! When first coming up with a new, let's say, fancy cocktail, one of the first mistakes I made was thinking that using more ingredients made a better cocktail. Now this can be fine if you use some massive ingredients in the right way, but more often than not, when you start combining a lot of different ingredients, the final drink ends up being kind of a bit unfocused and muddled. Instead, when I'm coming up with a new drink, I like to think in terms of profiles and layers. Some flavors can remain distinct from each other, whilst others blend together and add complexity or just dilution. Instead of trying to think of the full recipe, it's easier for me to just pick a profile or two and then add the layers to each to build the right amount of complexity. So bear with me because this can be a little confusing, but the best example I can give is of a bitter and spicy cocktail. The bitter and spicy profiles will remain distinct from each other, and you can easily pick them out in the final drink. Now, if I want to add complexity to the spice side, then maybe I'd layer it with an earthy flavor. These go together really well. The next thing I think about is, do I want to keep the two profiles fully separate, or do I want to try to merge them together? If I decide to merge them, then instead of using Campari, maybe I'd use Cynar to try and link the bitter vegetal flavor to the earthy flavor on the spice side. If I wanted to keep the two profiles separate, then maybe I'd stick with Campari and add grapefruit bitters to the layer the bitter side. If I went this route, probably wouldn't use the earthy flavor on the spice side. A smoky flavor could be better here because it isn't going to clash with the fruit flavors on the bitter side, and the spicy side will still get some extra depth. Now, going down one path will lead you to a dark, spiced, earthy cocktail with a vegetal bitterness, and the other will give you a bright, fruity bitter drink with a sharp, spicy, smoky kick. They're completely different, even if they start out with the same idea. Now, that's all pretty confusing, but it's the easiest way I can verbalize what years of making custom cocktails has left me with. The more data points you have, then the more complex your profiles and layers can be, and the better your decisions will be as you iterate drink to drink. After time, you'll start to automatically adjust ratios so that you can get to the flavor combination you have in mind quicker. So coming up with your new drinks profiles could be as simple as grabbing the first bottle or ingredients in view, but it can also get a lot more detailed and complicated. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to say I want to create a spicy drink with either a rum or a gin base. I've had a lot of spicy cocktails, but I've never seen a bar menu with spicy drinks using these base spirits. I'm sure they exist, but it's definitely not common. The next decision I need to make is if I want a dark drink, a bright drink, or something down the middle. It's not impossible to create bright flavors over a barrel-aged spirit like a dark rum or an Old Tom gin, but it's quite a bit more difficult. This is the same as trying to create really dark flavors while still preserving a white rum or a London Dry Gin's cleanness. I'm going to go for a bright drink with a crisp fruit profile. I always like to use budget-friendly but still good spirits when I'm iterating a new drink, and I'm going to start with Miami Club's white rum for this one. If that needs to change or even switch to gin later, then I've got a few different bottles I can tap into. Now, normally I would put more effort in up front to kind of get the direction of a cocktail and get me 50% of the way there without actually making the cocktail. And once I'm there, I have a pretty good idea of where the drink is going, and it lets me only buy a few different ingredients. Because this video is about showing the full process, I kind of figured it was better to get as much as I could and then really show how that drink progresses from the initial idea to the final one that's going to be, hopefully, really good. So I'm going to do my best to verbalize my thought process throughout this entire kind of iteration. And the one final thing I'll say before I get started is that it's usually best to start simple with a new cocktail. When you start adding in complexity and high numbers of layers, it's really easy to lose focus on how something actually affects a drink unless it's very prominent. As I go iteration to iteration, then the drink will kind of get more complicated, it'll get more detailed as it goes on. And the purpose of that, like I said, is really just to figure out what makes the drink work and what doesn't make it work. Now, my first ingredient is obviously the rum. In general, I will start with 1.5 ounces if I'm planning to layer this with other spirits or liqueurs, and 2 ounces or maybe even a bit more if it's a very kind of spirit-focused drink like an old-fashioned. The next ingredient will either be lemon or lime, but I'm going to pick some other ingredients before I kind of narrow down which one I want to go with. As far as quantity though, I really don't want this to turn out as like a hot daiquiri, so I want the citrus, whether it's lemon or lime, to be kind of lower. It's going to be a supporting flavor because I want to retain that brightness and acidity in the final drink, but I don't want the drink to come out tasting like lemon or tasting like lime. In general, that cutoff is right around half an ounce. And as far as the next ingredient goes, ideally I'm going to pick a liqueur. There's a lot to choose from. So if I'm keeping this drink, you know, light, crisp, and vibrant, I don't want a dark liqueur. I don't want something that's going to overpower it. And as I said in a couple other videos, I've got a lot more, probably about the same amount as what's on the wall, over off to one side. So Rocky's Botanical Liqueur is one of my personal favorites. But if I don't go that route, then Saint Germain Elderflower might be a really cool combination. California Spiced Liqueur is another really cool one. That is a kind of a cinnamon, cardamom, clove liqueur. It's not actually spicy from a heat standpoint. It's just very heavily spiced. I also have the Heirloom Creme de Flora, which is kind of a liquefied bouquet. Iris is more anise flavored and Suze is very bitter. I don't think either of those are kind of paths I want to go down by themselves. So I think I'm actually going to go for the Creme de Flora. So with that being said, I'm going to make a really simple drink. It's not going to be well balanced, but it's going to give me a starting point for how this is going to end up. Put 1.5 ounces of white rum. I go half an ounce of the Creme de Flora. And I think I'm going to go half an ounce of lemon juice as well. So the next thing is the spice component, which I'm going to go this route. I'm probably not going to go the green Thai chili pepper, so that's going to lead me back to the habaneros. This is going to get muddled in with the rest of the drink. I'm going to intentionally try not to get some of the seeds and just get kind of the tip of it. So this smells very lemon forward, kind of lavender. The flower notes comes through here. The rum kind of fades in, but it smells a little candy-ish though. All right, so iteration number 1, and again, this isn't cocktail. This is purely to see how these flavors of the habanero, the creme de flora, the white rum, and the lemon actually interact with each other. The habanero is I actually kind of like it. Habanero is a bit much. It is spicy. The creme de flora gets overshadowed just a little bit, but it still brings kind of a nice lavender flavor there forward. The lemon was too much there, but again, once the rest of the ingredients are in this cocktail, it's kind of got a larger volume. That'll be tamed down quite a bit. So I don't really love this. I think the habanero is still a way I want to experiment with for a couple more items. I don't think the creme de flora works as well here as I thought it would. So I'm going to put it back. So again, to reiterate, the reason you want to use a budget spirit for this is because this is now going down a drain. The drink was cool. It can be made into something really interesting, but that's not the direction I want to go on. So for this iteration, drink number 2, I want to get something more crisp, a little brighter, and I want to rely more on the fruit flavor rather than the liqueur itself. I have 1.5 ounces of the Miami Club white rum. I have half an ounce of the lemon. And in addition, I've switched out the creme de flora for the California spiced liqueur. I think will go really nicely with the bright fruits that I'm kind of have in mind at this point. I think habanero is still the right approach here. So I'm going to juice this guava. I'm going to go ahead and add 1/2 ounce of the raw guava juice. And then as far as other ingredients go, I don't think I'm going to add anything else to this one. I want to see how the guava and the California spice liqueur work together. And then based on that is going to depend on kind of where I move from here. So again, I'm not treating this like a cocktail until I'm a little bit closer. Now again, if this is good, this is what I would call the 50% range. And this is what I would hope to kind of come up with on paper before going out to get ingredients. Much better. But it tastes somewhat like a margarita. So the problem here is that the lemon is bringing the citrus and the guava is bringing somewhat of a lime flavor. I know those two don't taste very similar like by themselves, but in this drink, this tastes like a margarita, which is kind of cool. It's margarita with like the cinnamon and kind of cardamom and clove spice on the end of it. And the red habanero is coming through. It's strong. Like this is hot. So, okay. Good step in the right direction. But I'm going to reduce the citrus. I don't think the guava is the right move here, only because it's coming off like a lime. I'm going to switch to the pears, and I think I want to keep this where it is for the time being. So let me tip this out, and we'll do number 3. All right, so drink number 3. This was definitely the right combination. I'm sticking with this. The citrus is too high, and I don't like the lemon too much. Again, with this combination, with other combinations, maybe the Rockies, for instance, the lemon would be the right move. But, you know, you can go off in an endless branch of ideas and tangents. So for the sake of simplicity, I try not to iterate too much. I like to change 1 or 2 things about each drink and then kind of ratio things as you go along. So I'm going to keep 1.5 ounces of this. I'm going to keep 1/2 ounce of this. This could probably bump up a little bit, but I'm going to wait till I get a little further in this process before I decide that. I'm going to go ahead and use the lime. I'm going to reduce this down to maybe 3/8 or so. All right, so I'm going to add 1.5 ounce of white rum, followed by 1/2 ounce of the California spiced. I'm going to add 3/8 of an ounce of the lime juice. For the next fruits, I'm going to stick with pear, and I kind of want to add the apple as well. I think that's going to be a cool combination. So let me go ahead and cut this. The juice is already cleaned and ready to go. A green apple is crisp, it's somewhat bitter, it's very sharp flavor-wise. Pear's a little more subtle. So this is a good example of where we're taking the base flavor of an ingredient and we're kind of adding layers to it to give it extra complexity. If we just have pear by itself, it's probably not as impactful as if we have, let's say, green apple by itself. But if we want to maintain the pear flavor, we can use things like green apple to kind of lengthen it out and give that extra bit of punch. So we're going to go for 3/4 ounce of the fresh pear juice. And then I'm going to go for 1 slice of green apple. It's not huge, maybe 3/16 of an inch thick, look somewhat small. So for this one, I'm going for a Thai chili. I think I'm going to keep everything green. And because I'm trying to add sharpness to this pear, I don't want a very flavorful spice. I want something that's going to be sharp as well. And a Thai chili from that standpoint is significantly hotter than a jalapeno. And usually what I will do for a Thai chili is go basically in a 1/4 inch thick section, leave the seeds in place, and just muddle that in as well. So as far as the ingredients for drink number 3, I've got 1.5 ounces of the white rum, I've got 1/2 ounce of the California spice, I've got 3/4 ounce of pear juice, I've got 3/8 ounce of lime juice, I've got a 1/4 inch long piece of a green Thai chili, and then I've got let's say a 1/4 inch piece of apple as well. Again, just off to one side so it's not as big. Smell-wise, the pear and the apple have really kind of layered each other. The Thai chili is kind of on this, sharp spice on the nostrils adding to it as well. So the apple is adding some of the crispness, some of the bitterness, and then the Thai chili is coming in and adding the sharpness and the spice to it itself. Right now, I'm just trying to get the green fruit profile figured out. And it's easier for me to build off of it because I do want the green fruit to be the primary profile. I think this is the right path. All right, drink number 3. So interestingly enough, even though there's more volume here, the cardamom, clove, and cinnamon liqueur is actually coming through more than I thought it would. At least more than the other ones. Surprisingly, the pear doesn't really bring as much flavor as I thought it would. I thought there would be more since I upped it from 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce, but not really. I think the apple's in there too, but again, it's not. Even with the lime, the apple, and the pear, it's still falling flat. So spice-wise, I think a 1/4 ounce is good. The heat is lingering, but it's a sharper heat, which is what I was looking for. It's quick to burn and quick to go away. So nothing wrong there. Some drinks you want that heat to linger. This one, I'm kind of liking the way it just comes and goes really fast. But when you do feel it, it is quite hot. So that's good. All right, so as far as the drink 4, I'm going to keep this out for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and clean everything else. I think that needs to go up to an ounce at least. The green apple, I'm going to put 2 pieces in. I think I want to keep the lime where it's at. I think the rum is starting to do more harm than good here. I think I'm going to switch this to gin. And I think that is going to tie in better with the pear. And I think I need to do something to add into this as well. I like that spice profile, but I'm not layering it. There's not much help there. Even though this does come through more than I thought it would, it's coming through more because the other stuff is weaker. So I want more potency with the weaker stuff, and I want to go ahead and add complexity to this as well. So with that being said, I'm not going to do too much as far as switching out ingredients other than the rum to gin, but I am going to change the ratios of everything to try to bring this thing more in alignment. The first thing I'm going to do is switch the rum out. Again, this isn't like a slight at the rum. This is just not the right spirit to be used in the kind of drink that I'm going for. So similar with the rum, I'm going to go 1.5 ounces of this gin. I'm going to go 1/2 ounce of the California spiced. So I'm going to do 2 slices of apples at this time. This is, let's say, a little under 1/2 inch. As far as the pear goes, I'm going to do a full ounce of pear. I'm going to keep the lime mostly where it's at, so that's roughly 3/8. The gin is coming through more than the rum is. I think the pear just about the same, but that's okay because I increased the amount of pear and I put in a spirit that's more pungent. So I think that's fairly well balanced. Obviously, the next thing is the green Thai chili. I'm going to go just a smidge larger than I did the first time around. I can smell the gin off it. Okay, drink number 4. This is a step in the right direction. The gin is a bit too much. I think I might want to reduce that down and maybe increase this just a little bit. But the pairing of the gin to the pear, to the apple, to the Thai chili is pretty much spot on for what I was looking for. I think the pear could still be more. I think it's still too subtle. So I think that needs to go up. And I think that's going to take some of the bite off the gin. But overall, I'm very happy with how this one tastes. It smells vegetal. It smells like celery almost. It's not a bad smell, and celery does have kind of an aftertaste that I do not like. So this to me is actually really cool because it's giving me the impression of celery without using celery. It kind of makes me think of like a corpse reviver cocktail, which normally uses chartreuse. The chartreuse note is obviously not there, but the combination of the pear and the citrus and the heat kind of tricks your mind into thinking that there's something not similar to it, but the distant cousin of it, if that makes any sense. All right, so drink number 5. So I haven't used too much of the ingredients on the lower side of my bar yet. You can kind of see them on either side. That row actually goes all the way through, and each glass is filled with something. So we have like matcha powder right here. That would be really cool, actually. Okay, that's cool. I was just picking something green, I think, because my drink is green, but I really do like how that matcha kind of tea flavor went in. So wondering if it's best to do a switch up here. No, I don't think so. This is too sweet. Other examples, we have chipotle, cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, cloves. I have different woods for smoking. That's mostly my garnishes, but there's also like heavily peated malt there as well. So you can kind of make some weird drinks with that. Off to the right-hand side, I have most of my infusions. So I have mushrooms, chai spice, different teas. I've got lemongrass and Zadar spice. I think lemongrass actually might be a cool idea here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pour this into each. Bitter-wise, I have a few different bitters that can go in here. The Japanese bitters make some really interesting flavors. These are the yuzu bitters. The shisho bitters are what I find myself using the most. I think the shiso bitters might be better here. The shiso bitters are from the plant of the same name. It's similar to like a mint. As far as what that actually smells like, I don't get mint. I'm not supposed to get mint. But you do get that traditional kind of shiso smell. You can kind of equate it to, let's say, like a very pungent, flavorful black tea, or maybe a jasmine tea, maybe a mix of both. I also get some tree bark here, but I think that's going to be kind of cool. I have these green cardamom bitters from Cuna de Piedra. I think this might be overdoing it only because there's cardamom in the liqueur itself. So that being said, this will accentuate that profile. I do have a hopped grapefruit bitters from Bittermints, which are kind of cool. And I do have these Szechuan peppercorn bitters, but I don't think that's the move I want to make here. Not the move I want to make here. So I'm going to go and put those back. And just to cover my bases, the sassafras and sorghum bitters are also a no-go. So for the yuzu, I think I'm going to put the yuzu back too. And for the lemongrass, I would normally infuse this with the gin. I'm just going to dump some in there and then restrain. It's not going to give me the same thing, but I'm going to put a lot in. Some amount of that's going to seep into the drink itself. It'll give me an idea of what the final infused gin would taste like if I went that route. I'm going to shake these up. All right, so the shiso bitters first. Don't like that. Actually, it tastes like a beer, it tastes like an IPA. That's weird. That has potential. Again, alcohol content's too strong, but that is nice. All right, let me go ahead and restrain this one. There's still some lemongrass in there. I'll survive. You don't get a lot of it, but it is there. Okay. All right. Shiso bitters is out. Grape bitters, cool idea, but not what I'm looking for in this drink. The green cardamom bitters, these work. I just wish these were less alcohol forward. But that might be okay. I might end up reducing this. And the lemongrass, I'm going to keep as well. Let's try this again. I'm going to go 1 ounce of gin. A little bit of an overpour, but only a little bit. I'm going to go 1/2 ounce of the California spiced liqueur. These are 45%, so even though I've reduced the amount of gin, I'm going to offset that by adding a couple dashes of this. All right, I'm going to add my 2 slices of apple. I'm going to add my 3/8 of an ounce of lime juice. Let's go 1 ounce and a quarter. And I'm just going to sprinkle some of the lemongrass in here. So that's a decent sized pinch. Again, I prefer to infuse it, but this is kind of quick iterations. You just got to get something out there to get the flavor out there. And then I've got my 1/4 inch of the green Thai chili. Like the others, I'm going to muddle everything up. Now you might notice that I haven't been putting sugar in any of these drinks, and that's intentional. I don't want to add sugar kind of in the iteration process because it's only going to make a drink better. Essentially, if I can make a drink that's really good, but just needs a little bit of sugar to balance it, then it's going to be a much better drink than if I am tasting the sugar from the beginning and allowing that to become a flavor. And that's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but at the same time, sugar is something that you taste immediately. It's like sourness or spiciness or bitterness. As soon as you taste it, it is there. And sometimes it can cover up the nuances in flavors. So by focusing on the flavors themselves and then adding the sugar to the minimal amount at the very end, I'm getting a cocktail that is very well balanced and does not need the sugar to be good. It just needs the sugar to take it from really good to great. So this is nice. It is still light on pear. The gin is right where it should be. It's adding the crispness from the juniper instead of dominating. Cardamom note obviously comes through more so than the others, but there's still kind of clove and cinnamon, in the background from the liqueur itself. The lime, again, it's adding the acidity. It does need to be balanced out by sugar, or like a simple syrup. And I will add that in, and I think a little over 1/4 ounce is right here. The lemongrass isn't coming through as much as I would have hoped for, but again, I'm not doing too much with it. I'm just throwing it into a shaker at the last minute. So for the final drink, I do want to infuse that. I think that's going to really round out the flavors that I'm starting to see here. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of simple syrup. I think 1/4 ounce is going to be all that we need here. Let's stir that up. That balances everything out really nicely. I would like to see more of the lemongrass, which is why I'm going to infuse it. And the addition of the simple syrup and the higher pear juice has kind of removed some of that celery note. I kind of liked that. So I'm going to add like 1 inch of celery to this. Now, I don't usually like making drinks with celery. It's not common. But as you start getting into more kind of complex drinks and mixology in general, you're going to see that kind of come up more. There's a lot of celery bitters. It can add a really interesting kind of vegetal flavor to a drink. Luckily, I don't have to remake this to add that celery in or to increase the pear juice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another 1/4 ounce. I cut a 3/4 inch portion of it and muddled it up in here. And what that did is it brought everything back. It made it more vegetal. It's not the drink that I was going for in this video. It's not the drink I thought I would end up with. But I'm kind of happy I did, because whilst it is celery-esque, there is so much more flavor here. The pear, with 1.5 ounces of it, the correct amount, is perfect. The green apple adds to that pear really nicely. The green Thai chili pepper gives a lot of heat, and that's important because I want the spice there, but I don't want the flavor there. There's a lot going on as is flavor-wise, and bringing in a pepper flavor I think would be a negative. So as a recap, this drink is 1 ounce of gin, 1/2 ounce of California spiced liqueur. It is 2 dashes of green cardamom bitters. It is 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. It is 1.5 ounce of pear juice. It's got 3/8 of an ounce of lime juice. It's got 2 pieces of apple, both about 1/4 inch thick and right off the side, so they're not too big. It's got 1/4 inch of Thai chili pepper, and it's got 3/4 inch of celery. That's going to bump up to 1 inch because I already drunk some of this before I kind of decided to put that in there. Now that's a completed drink, and I know it's going to be fantastic because I know how this one tastes here. And it's what I would make on a regular basis. But the point of this is to make something that takes that level of complexity drink and just elevates it just a little bit further. Now, as far as making this look better, right now, it looks like a margarita. It's cloudy and it's a little bit kind of greenish yellow. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with this, but that cloudiness is there because all of the solids and pulp and material is inside of the juice when I press it. Visually, I want to change this, and the way I can do that is with clarification. You have to strip the solids out while still leaving the flavor that those solids impact on the liquid. You can do that in a few different ways, but the way I prefer to do that is centrifugally. Centrifugally being from a centrifuge. That sounds crazy and whatnot, but it's actually my preferred way of doing it because it takes very little effort on my part. So I bought a centrifuge for like $50. And it has the capacity to spin 120 milliliters of liquid at 4,000 RPM. Now, as I mentioned, the clarification isn't really going to affect the taste of this drink. However, if you are going to go to this extra bit of effort, then it's important to mix the pear and the lime juice before you spin them. If you don't, then the juice will turn brown. Acid keeps it bright green. In my experience, 4,000 RPM is the optimal rotational speed for clarification. Now, it does also depend on duration, but there is a trail-off point. So you can spin it up to 30, 40 minutes, and you might get a marginally clearer liquid, but realistically, the first few minutes are what really matters. So this is what the pear juice and lime juice looks like right when I juice it. It's very cloudy, it's yellow, there's almost zero transparency through it. Once it's been in the centrifuge at 4,000 RPM for, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, this is what it looks like. That's not a perfect clarification, but you can see where the solids have separated at the bottom, and what you have above the solids is a somewhat clear liquid. Now, it's not perfectly clear, but it is colorless. Now, other clarification methods might give a clear liquid in the end, but there would be a lot more effort from my side. Now, for the final iteration of this drink, which will be the actual cocktail, that lemongrass is not going to be put on top of the shaker. It's going to be infused into, I think, both of these at the same time, purely because the volume of this by itself isn't enough. Now, generally speaking, infusing spirits is not a difficult process. As long as you get your duration right and your ratios correct, then it kind of just takes care of itself. I'm only going to make enough for 4 drinks, so that's going to equal 4 ounces of the gin, 2 ounces of the California spiced liqueur, Some people will say that for infusions, you have to let them sit for at least 3 days to a week. Generally, I would agree with the 3-day rule, but it depends on surface area and the amount of the material you're infusing into your spirits. For something like this, where it's a dried, chopped lemongrass, there's so much surface area here, it's so thin, it's going to infuse really quickly. Now, it looks like dirty bog water, but it smells really good and it's going to make a really good drink tomorrow. So that's it, and I'm going to let this sit for roughly 24 hours or so. Once the color has shifted, I'll know it's ready, and I'll go ahead and filter, strain it, and then start the final iteration of this drink. So naming the cocktail that you've just made can sometimes be the hardest part of making the drink. Sometimes that takes me a while, so I'm going to come back to that, but what really matters here is taste and, to a lesser point, smell. So the aroma is a balanced mix of kind of bright vegetal and fruit flavors, with the more subtle spices kind of standing apart, but still very much there. It's a really interesting smelling drink, and it seems kind of simple on the surface until you realize that you can't really put your finger on what's creating the aromas. Not to reiterate, but the taste, very similar to the smell. The pear is a primary flavor, but it's being enhanced by all the other things. Because it is pear, but at the same time, it's pear with the green apple and the Thai chili and the lime and the celery, and that really just gives a really interesting depth there, not to mention the fact that it's hot, it's spicy, and you wouldn't really associate pear with that, so what you're getting is kind of a new fruit, flavor at least, and that's really cool. It's a similar note for the other spices, but to a lesser extent. So the lemongrass infusion and the cardamom bitters are working really well with the California spice liqueur, and that's giving another side and kind of layer of depth, but one that isn't blending in with the fruit because you don't associate those flavors with the fruit. The others you do. And that's, again, how we can take two profiles and kind of make them work together, but still keep them separate. And from a clarification standpoint, I mean, it's transparent-ish. I mean, you could make the argument that it looks like a watered-down margarita, fine, but it's really, really good. And more importantly, it's interesting. It's not something that I've had before, and the gin is here too. And that's bringing a natural kind of juniper twang to the drink. So to sum it up, this is a very cohesive drink that doesn't lose focus from the two profiles, but it also manages to be a spicy and a gin-based cocktail. So even though there's a ton of depth and complexity here, it drinks very well. It's not muddled, it's not losing sight of things. It's very clean from a flavor standpoint. This drink would look better in a coupe, but as it gets warmer, the spice becomes a bit much. It just needs the ice and a low ball to maintain its freshness. I thought about using a few different garnishes, but I wanted something unique, and I thought annatto seeds was kind of a cool look. This drink is bright green, but seriously hot, and the addition of the annatto seeds kind of made me think of lava rocks. As a result, I'm calling this the BORA, after the tropical volcanic island of the same name. It's a great drink, and whilst the clarification is arguably not worth the effort, it's still unique, refreshing, and exceedingly well balanced. Taste-wise, this is an A-, but there's a lot of ingredients you have to prepare, and at some level, that does bring all but the most amazing of drinks down a spot. I still think this is an awesome creation, and I'm very happy that I spent the time to come up with it. That's it for my video on making a custom complex cocktail from scratch. In part 4, I'm going to compare the spicy liqueurs on the market today and see which one is best and why. Thanks for watching. Cheers!